little slack on this committee, so I came just to check.
Actually, we show how it's done.
We are going to pull that one on the transit.
Good afternoon and welcome to the June Public Works Committee. I hereby call the committee to order. In our presence, we have Councilmember Larson, Councilmember Scipio, Vice Chair Burke, as well as Councilmember Clark in visitation. Are there any items on our consent agenda that we would like pulled?
C3.
Looks like we would have C3 pulled. Anything else? Could I get a motion to approve the balance?
So moved. Second.
And this is by voice. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Clerk, can we have C3, please?
Item C3, resolution awarding a purchase order for TransAid buses for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, Model 1, $1,108,000.
Mr. Fansler. Yes, it is.
Maybe it's my ears.
Mr. Fansler, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Jeff Fansler, Director of Transportation. This item before you is essentially the procurement of our paratransit vehicles. These are the cutaway style, smaller scale vehicles that we use to operate our on-demand service. Really what this is an extension or utilizing an open contract that we have for bus procurement. So what this allocation allows us is to purchase to enact that contract clause up to. We actually have a kind of a balloon in there which allows us to purchase a number of vehicles over the term of the contract. And so this iteration would procure 5 vehicles for just over $1 million to replace some of the aging fleet. So I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Yes, Mr. Fans, I just wanted this pull because I think the public just needs to know that getting buses is not an easy thing for us. Just because we approve a contract doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get them immediately, and that we have to be proactive in how we are managing our fleet. The TransAid buses are just so important to so many people, and so I just wanted them to know about this and how we are contracting for it. So do we have any idea when these might actually be purchased and be here for us, for our use?
Great question. And the fortunate part of this is that we have an open contract, right? So that streamlines some of the procurement process somewhat. But right now, the lead time on these cutaway style paratransit vehicles is about 6 to 7 months, much reduced in our fixed route larger buses, which is well over about 10 to 12, even sometimes 15 months. But so these are about a 6-month lead time on these today.
So we'll see them next year.
So this is essentially a hedge against future. This is an option.
That's right.
Looking forward.
Yeah, when we contracted, we had a clause in there up to 39 buses. It's over the term, 5 years.
Great. Okay. Got to get a motion, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Voice vote on this as well. Oh, no, we got it. Great. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Let's go to our one general agenda item, please.
Item G1, consideration of a technical corrections ordinance amending Chapter 75 of the Code of the City of Winston-Salem entitled Stormwater Management.
All right. Mr. Huff, please,
Good afternoon.
please enlighten us.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and council. The item that we have in front of you now are some technical corrections to Chapter 75 of the City Code. And I will attempt to walk you through those corrections via this presentation. So in general, the rationale for these corrections are both regulatory and legislative. We'll go through those various nuances and try to walk you through how we are doing things now versus the proposed changes that you have in front of you. And then obviously any questions and discussion. So the first change, if you will, is the city's NPDES permit requirements. The National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit that the city has will be renewed this year, and it's going to have various changes in it. One of the changes that the state has mandated is a local government's authority to access and inspect facilities within their jurisdiction for compliance with stormwater regulations. So we have about 80 facilities that we inspect. They have various potential to pollute stormwater. So we inspect those facilities. And then you have all these other facilities that are non-permitted sites, like a gas station, a automotive facility, and things like that. The state wants us to have the ability to inspect all facilities, not the ones that are just permitted or have illicit discharges. Another driver that's invoking these text amendments is House Bill 488. This is in line with your stormwater control measures that your private developers implement. Basically, nowadays, local governments are prohibited from adopting regulation that requires a private owner of a stormwater control to make payments to that local government for maintenance and upkeep of those private property stormwater devices. So the city currently has a mechanism where a developer pays into a fund that is then maintained by the city and then dispersed by the city for maintenance, upkeeps, and failures of private devices. And our current policy is basically higher than what it is now. So limitations on that, local government can't require more than 10% of the stormwater control's original cost. And then the final provision of 488 is the private property owner that maintains that device, they need to have control of the funds, unlike our situation right now where the city has control of the funds. Councilmember Scipio.
Councilmember Scipio.
So right now, they're paying us and we maintain.
Yes.
So with this change, they will no longer pay us and they have to maintain, is that right?
Yes. So there's the commercial aspect of it where they do pay into us, and then there's the residential aspect of it where they have an escrow account that they pay into over amount of time. So we'll differentiate the escrow account from that's involving the residential property owners from the pay-in that is commercial properties.
But ultimately, we will no longer have to maintain them, but the owners will, commercial or residential?
Councilmember Scipio, this is geared around the money that preserves them ultimately.
Right.
And who has control of it.
I got that.
The essence of 488 is the city can't control that money that these private owners pay in like we do now for commercial properties. We can't control that is where they're going with this legislation.
Okay.
And so the potential downside of that is when one fails, people can't come to the city, which is not necessarily a downside for us. But I mean, the question is are those monies put away wisely, or is the entity still around?
No, the city loses control over the purse strings and how it's disseminated, and ultimately it's a control issue where that private developer maintains control of that escrow account versus it being in the city's control. That makes sense.
Yeah, but who maintains it?
The stormwater control device, the private property owner maintains the device. So that stormwater control measure is going to be owned, operated, and maintained by that private owner. This legislation and what we propose is more about the funding mechanisms for ownership and maintenance. As far as who controls that money that would go to repair these devices when they become aged, disabled, need maintenance, et cetera.
So
The ongoing maintenance is not affected by this. That's
These funds would go to preserve and maintain. If a
Right.
forebay needs to be mucked out, a pipe needs to be fixed, it's for maintenance as well.
but we are currently doing that. I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
No, the city is not maintaining these devices. The city is holding money
Oh,
to allocate for
whenever
maintenance
you need
on
to.
an as-needed basis.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you've got a hierarchy. That private property owner still has responsibility for that control, that stormwater control, but the money that goes to preserve it That's what's changing right now.
It's in an escrow account, so when there's a needed repair, we then say, here's the money for
There
that
you
repair.
go. There you go.
I
It's
got you.
control of the money at the end of the day.
So we lose any interest that we might be holding from having that money. in our
Control,
account.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was going to say, more importantly, control. We lose control over it. Because when it fails after this legislation, the money may or may not be theirs.
Yes.
Because we don't have the control that we have over it now.
The development group could cease to exist. I mean, that's where it becomes problematic, is
Right.
what happens when that legal entity disappears.
Right.
John.
John?
So if we're not going to control the money, where does compliance come into all of this?
So if the owner fails to maintain the device, there's still provisions in Chapter 75 of the code to regulate them. It's just, again, we're talking about the money, the provisions to maintain it. We still have stop work orders, notices of violation, penalties as need be for compliance with, our stormwater regulations. This is more focusing on the money and the maintenance dollars to keep those things moving forward.
So are these generally controlled or operated by the HOAs, or are they separate by the original developer? Who?
For residential properties, it's typically an HOA. For commercial property, it is the owner of record.
Councilmember Clark?
We currently have money in the bank we're holding. Would we, is this passed, by the way?
The legislation, yes.
Okay. Would we then take the money we are holding, say, from Mr. King's property and give it to him?
So for entities who have already paid into the fund, we are going to continue to hold those monies, but we are going to distribute them out as that owner requests them.
Okay.
The legislation demands that we make accessible, is the word that they use, those funds that we've collected historically for ownership, maintenance, et cetera, for those devices where those owners have paid in historically.
Would you have any idea how much money we're talking about here that we're holding?
Right offhand, Councilmember Clark, I don't know, but it's several $100,000 that we've collected over the years.
Okay, I see Mr. Rao typing vigorously. What's that?
I'm just thinking.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'd just be curious at some point, what's the order of magnitude of the issue? Thank you.
One more question, following up with Mr. Clark. If we are going to still hold it, does that mean that they no longer pay into that fund? We're just going to hold it and disseminate it when they ask us?
Correct.
And therefore, there will be no more income coming in?
Correct.
They have to keep it wherever they want?
At this point, that mechanism for funding is no longer available to us, and we will distribute it as they request it. So henceforth, we're going to discuss in a second the new path per 488 that we are mandated to do. And that brings up a good point. Everything that we're talking about here is past the legislation and/or the NPDES permitting entity and is basically mandated at this point.
It's mandated.
City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
You are correct.
All right.
So with the NPDES amendments, these are more clear regarding allowing access. Currently, the stormwater manager shall be permitted to enter and inspect facilities as often as necessary to determine compliance with the ordinance, which is illicit discharge, things like that. The change here would be to enter and inspect any facility within the municipal limits of the city as often as may be necessary to determine compliance with the ordinance or the city's NPDES permit. So it's just broadening that authority to comply with the permit requirements. And that one's pretty straightforward. Councilmember Scipio, you're scratching your head, so.
How many facilities did you say this would mean that we'd have to take on in total?
We have over 80 facilities that we routinely inspect that have permits that are issued by the state. This would allow us the access to inspect any facility. Contrary to now, it has to be an illicit discharge issue or it has to be something with a compliance issue that allows us into that facility. Not to say that we would inspect them all, but we have the ability to do so per the new permit.
But how many facilities are you saying that would increase from 80 to, how many, you don't know?
We're not wanting or proposing to take on inspection of all facilities. That would include any of your mom and pop gas station, convenience store. We just have the ability to if need be.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out, does that mean that you have to have more staff because of this ordinance?
No, this is just purely a compliance item. We do not propose to put inspection of all facilities in our stormwater permit to the state. This is complying with their permit requirements as issued, So any other questions on this phase? If not, we will jump to the slightly more complicated one.
My gosh.
Maybe not.
There we go. No,
Come on, you.
any facility.
So just to back up and get a running start with the compliance items for escrow accounts and then payment into the fund like we talked about. Residential currently uses an escrow account. Commercial uses that failure fund that they're paying directly to the city. So for HOAs, like we talked about before, the percentage is 15% that we used to do. And that's paid in on a sinking fund where 2/3 of the fund is populated within 5 years and the remaining balance is populated within 10. And the HOA can populate the fund when they're established. And then those lien provisions apply. So for residential, just to be clear, it's escrow accounts, city being party to that escrow account, 15%, and then the HOA would pay into 2/3, 5 years, balance within 10. So those are the provisions that we used to do. And also, we got a lien we got a lien in general to provide security for those. So now shifting gears to the commercial side, they paid 4%, these commercial property owners paid 4% of the construction of the stormwater control measure prior to the issuance of their stormwater permit. So this is the one where they paid directly to the city. The only exceptions were city and county entities that we could earmark funds in our budgets versus paying that 4%. Those are the only exceptions there. And then when it came necessary, any owner who'd paid into the fund could apply for a loan. So with a loan, they were paying us back to repopulate that. We can no longer do that per the requirements of 488. And then obviously the lien provisions apply with that. And then what the city could do, the city of Winston-Salem could pool those funds and invest those monies collected to defray cost. Obviously, that's off the table for future payments and stuff like that. So those are the current mechanisms for commercial and residential properties. So 488 kind of condenses all that down. Everything moving forward would be in an escrow agreement that the developer is populating, and instead of 15% over time, they are populating 10%, and they are allowed to do that within a 5-year window. And basically, they are holding the money like we've discussed, and they are using that money presumably for maintaining, reconstruction, and maintenance of that stormwater system. To Councilmember Clark's question on anybody who's paid in the funds, like we talked about, we have to maintain those funds at an accessible level to folks that have paid into the fund historically for maintenance, repair, reconstruction cost of that owner's stormwater system who's paid into it via the old rules. And I know there was a lot of back and forth with that, but with that, I will be happy to entertain any questions.
Questions? Yes. Keith, what are the requirements of the reserve fund, how that can be held? Are there, maybe it's a better question for city attorney. If you're an entity that needs to hold these funds in escrow, what does that mean? What's, is it with a bank, with a?
I don't know that
your
they
mattress?
specified too much in terms of the requirements for the escrow account, other than it be with the developer. Frederick, do you recall?
I'm Frederick Evans, Assistant City Attorney. There was no specification as to how those funds are now to be held. They are just to be held, which is one of the issues that we had with this. I mean, where is it? Who's in charge of it? It's just to be held. What we did in this section to sort of give us a little protection was to write in a disclosure provision, which we are now requiring those developers to acknowledge the new provisions and to say that they will abide by this new statute. So that we felt that that would be a good way of at least saying, we may not know what you're doing, but you're at the beginning of this process, you are telling us that you're aware of the statute, you're aware of the rule, and you will abide by that.
But they could put the money in their kids' 529 plan.
They could.
We could get that statement, and the next day, it could change.
That's worrisome.
It is.
So the worst, I know we have to prove this because it's regulatory, it's required.
It's required, and what we currently have is not in compliance with.
It's not in compliance. So we definitely understand the need to do that, to be in compliance. I guess I'm more concerned that the worst case scenario is there would be no money to repair some of these systems if they fail, and then do they fall back on us as the city to come up with funds to help people who have decided not to save the money?
My answer to that would be they may try, but that's not the city's responsibility. These are private stormwater systems at the end of the day.
Right. So we're being voluntold.
Yeah.
Much like yesterday.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Chairman?
And
Chairman, yeah. So this is universal for the whole state?
Yes, sir.
And so that we can assume that for development purposes, this applies to county developments as well as city developments?
statewide.
I would believe so, yes, sir.
There's always been a little discussion about the difference between our stormwater management policies within the city versus stormwater policies within the county.
Well, 488 pretty much lets us know what is and what is not allowed anymore. So
Okay.
we're having to abide by this. It was actually enacted in August. So we're catching up. I think we're ahead of a lot of cities right now. I've been contacted because there's a lot of research done before we put this before you. Discussions with the School of Government. We had seminars just to try to make sure we were in line with what the state wanted. We obviously had some questions, just like the questions that you all have, particularly those questions dealing with the worst-case scenario, what's going to happen. But we vetted this out. We think we've done the best that we possibly can do based upon the rules that we were given. I think that disclosure statement, at least having that in there, gives us some added protection to say, you developer, you knew at the time, you understood what the rules were, and we've made that clear to you.
Thank you. Does this need a vote?
Yes, go ahead and vote on it, move it forward. I know, like yesterday, you didn't want to vote on it, but to move it out of committee, just go ahead and vote on it.
Can I get a motion to approve this, please?
So move to approve this.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Going to sleep.
There we go. That is unanimous. All right. Mr. Huff, while we have you, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight or a little bit of context around some of our changes. The stormwater impact on our budget this year is pretty significant, and I was wondering if you might be able to just cast a little light on why that's so and what we can expect to see.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, happy to. So I've got a couple slides here. We'll go through those very quickly. This is a lot of repeat for the members of the committee here. But we'll go through the stormwater fund very quickly, the current residential and non-residential rate structure, and then some of the stressors that we're seeing here that's necessitating rate increases. So for the fund, some just general facts. Our average revenue is approximately $10.2 million. Our rate structure was established in the 07-08 timeframe, where we consist of 4 residential tiers and 1 non-residential rate. And we have only had 1 rate increase, that was last year, since 2008. So a general breakdown of the fees: you have a nominal percentage with plan review fees, but you have basically a 60-40 breakdown, with 40% being contributed by residential fees and then the balance by non-residential fees. And that $9.8 million is basically through period 11 of this year. So we're on track to meet our $10.2 million now. So as far as impervious area in our community, again, you see the breakdown there, where it's kind of 60% of our impervious area roughly is commercial or institutional, and then the 40% being from the residential side roughly. So kind of mimics the fee structure that we have. Current billing structure, this is your residential rate right here. You can kind of see the annual fees per tier, 1 through 4, and kind of the monthly by monthly breakdown fee there. And then for our non-residential users, they pay $897.48 per impervious acre per year. So they're charged on a per acre impervious acre rate. So in general, just wanted to draw your attention to the big parts of the pie here, where you've got capital projects in the lavender color, and then drainage maintenance in the darker purple color. They constitute a large percentage of our annual expenditures. And these are just some kind of historic numbers of what we put into as far as the stormwater utility. But you can see that the overwhelming majority is for maintenance and upkeep of our drainage system. Over the years, we've had some legislation that has reduced our ability to collect impervious surface fees. House Bill 275 exempted the runways and taxiways for the airport. The airport was once one of our chief ratepayers. Now they are not, via this House bill. And you also have various developments that have reduced their impervious footprint. Whitaker Park, for example, has reduced their impervious footprint significantly in recent years. So you have increase in need, and then a decrease in revenue in some cases. Now to some stressors. Basically, capital drainage projects are growing every year. We have 30 known projects and growing, $30 million right now to complete those, with a projected time frame of 20 years to complete. And we have new projects developed frequently. And this does not include any of the 54 bridges that we own, operate, and maintain in the city. This is just pipes and culvert systems. This is just a snapshot of what we're working on right now, and the dollar figure associated with. They're in every ward, everywhere. Nobody's excluded in this. And you can see the dollar figures. They range from $500,000 to, in excess of $5 million. So just wanting to paint the picture with this. Additional stressors. Over the past 2 years and change, we've had numerous emergency failures. This list right here is what we've been working on, like I say, for the past 2 years. These are unknown projects that we didn't budget via the typical capital project process. where we're submitting them ahead of time, getting budgets together, and moving forward. These are failures where, Fanning Road last year, single ingress egress to numerous properties. The road was going to fail, denying them access. Buttonwood is another one, single ingress egress. 2 months ago, we didn't even know about Buttonwood. It wasn't even on our radar. Now this project could be $1 million. So these are stressors to the fund that as we sit on this failing infrastructure where we put these pipes and drainage features in the ground years ago, decades ago, and everything's got a hydraulic lifetime. It's going to fail at some point. So we're seeing that progression as we move forward. So with that, just a couple of brief slides to kind of paint the picture, spur the discussion. But this is a maintenance item that Sprague and Main started failing, sinkhole in the road, and we had to dispatch crews, close Sprague and Main for the better part of 2 weeks to make the repair. Unknown to us, but obviously when the road fails, you've got to react. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Keith. Questions? Councilmember Clark.
How much is the Buttonwood going to cost, and how many homes are past that area that would be impacted if the road failed?
How much is it going to cost?
This is in the West Ward. It's phenomenal. It's
Buttonwood right now, Councilmember Clark, I don't have a good tally because I don't know how long that piece of string is right now, but estimated $800,000.
and how many houses are past?
There are 8 houses on the other side of Buttonwood that would be cut off if that road failed.
Okay, 8 houses, and I think according to your chart, they're paying about $60 a year. What's 6 times 8? $500, I'm rounding here, to pay for a
$1 million
$1 million project.
Yes, sir.
I can't do them ahead, but that's more than 10 years. It's maybe 1,000 years, I don't know, but it's forever.
That's a great argument against sprawl.
But this is I'd call it a bridge. It's kind of an earthen thing, and I guess from the top to the bottom is 30 feet or so.
Yes, sir.
Every bit of
They
it.
span the former ravine that was there.
Ravine.
Allow
And it's
access.
failing, and it is, I've never seen anything like it. Anyway, just good example of the high cost of fixing some of the stuff and the footprint that's supporting that. Thank you.
Councilmember Scipio.
Is there technology that will allow us to, I think we're doing that though, aren't we going to do a study of all of our roads, culverts, and bridges and things to see just where we are? Because some things shouldn't be a surprise because everything is so old. And so, not that when you get old, you have to get replaced. I'm not saying that. But just general maintenance, if you know something, we can anticipate the built environment because a lot of this is old infrastructure. Is there a way that we can assess it so that we can then say, okay, we know this one is 60 years old and it's decaying more rapidly than that one. And so we need to put that on a higher priority list to get it before it fails, because we react after it's demolished. So here we are. And then we have to, where do we get the money to do all of this emergency repair?
This
From the
comes out of the
stormwater fund.
Utility, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So as we have more of that, we're going to need more money.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? So, yes, John.
So every year we add more impermeable surfaces in the city. Every year we're putting more water into the stormwater system. And every year that water goes down into the urban streams. And then every year we hear about erosion of the urban streams because of all the water that's going in the urban streams. And I know we've looked at trying to deal with issues of riverbank or stream bank erosion and stabilization. Have we made any progress at all with our 70-30 program at all?
You remember, the program has been placed on a hiatus, I guess, until we get clear legislation authorizing the program. That legislation was in your legislative package for this year. I know that Senator Lowe in particular is working on that. Can't tell you at this point in time when that will be scheduled for a hearing, but I know he's working on it.
That's a problem we see throughout the city, and, you know, we have this stormwater running through private properties. We have problems with the collapsing pipes and infrastructure that residents suddenly wake up one morning and find they have a hole in the front yard from a collapsing stormwater pipe that they did not know and maybe ran through the front of their yard and into an urban stream behind their house. So as soon as we can figure out some way to justifiably help the residents to deal with this issue, I think would be better. So I hope that we'll continue to put that on our wish list.
It will remain on the list. I'm hopeful this year it will pass, but again, Senator Lowe is working diligently along with our other delegation members in trying to get that passed. Keep in mind, this is a short session. They're trying to get out of there quickly. So if it doesn't pass this year, I assume it'll be on your agenda for next legislative priorities package.
Thank you.
Couple of points. We're seeing an increasing level of rainfall. The number of storm events has risen dramatically here in the last couple of years. I think we had two of the largest rainfalls we've ever recorded in January this year. And that's in a city that was built, you know, we've got a lot of old infrastructure. We're an old city. And until 1995, 1996, there were no regulations around what you built. You did not have to account for stormwater at all. Now, if you go out and you build Buttonwood, you go take that piece of dirt and develop it and put 8 houses on it, you have to come through us to show that your runoff is not going to damage the streams and do the kind of damage that we're out paying for now. So it's most of those things that we're having to repair is catch up for things that were not designed well in the past, but we do have mechanisms in place or policies in place to try to prevent that as we do grow and as we develop more land inside the city. So even though if we're increasing impervious surface, the controls, the stormwater controls are in place on those projects to keep that damage from occurring downstream, in theory. But again, we're dealing with 50-year floods that are happening much more often than 50
Nature's
years.
not playing fair.
Yeah, yes, FEMA really needs to help us out there. Anyway, okay. Any other questions? Keith, as usual, that was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anything else for the committee? All right, we're adjourned. See y'all, most of you have finance.
Go back at 4.